You may have noticed that I'm not a conventional speaker on how to be wise. This week I played in a football match and I tried to tackle someone with my face. 21 stitches. It's so bad it's on this side, you see? When I was 2 years old, I was playing in the garden with my sister and I came across a packet of my mum's cigarettes. So I ate them all. You may have noticed that I'm not an old bearded professor. I'm not one of the three wise men, and I'm not a wise owl. So you may be asking yourself, what on earth am I doing here to talk about how to be wise? Well, aside from the last 10 years working in the wisdom field, I believe very deeply that each and every one of us wants to be wise, just as we wish to lead healthy and happy lives. People who are wise, they're able to look at life, extract meaning, and if they share it, leave a legacy of hope, a legacy of ideas. Now, growing up, I became deeply frustrated that the age of information, new media, had moved on so much, but our ideas about what it means to be wise seem stuck in the dark ages. Clearly, with this face, I wasn't going to be a bearded professor anytime soon. So I decided to look into some of the generally accepted ideas of what it means to be wise. And there are three particular characteristics I'd like to focus on. One is this idea that wisdom is knowledge. We accumulate knowledge. So a wise person is able to see a situation or a person and extract a certain type of meaning from it. So, conventional wisdom is that we accumulate knowledge. So I went for it. I went to university, I studied theology, but all that happened was that instead of answers, all I got was more and more and more questions. Seemingly, wisdom was more elusive than ever before. The second characteristic is this idea from Aristotle that wisdom is about avoiding pain. Clearly didn't get that one too right. So a wise person can see a situation and know in some way how to avoid pain. And I wanted to avoid postmodern pain of financial hardship, so again I followed the conventional wisdom. Start a career, get job security. So I started a career in advertising, and I got a good salary, I got awards and recognition and all of this cool stuff that comes with starting a career. But I wasn't happy. If conventional wisdom doesn't lead to a happier life, how wise is it? So then there's this third strand, this third quality of what it means to be wise, this idea of worldly wisdom. If only we can go to distant lands and distant cultures, we can extract meaning from them. So, naturally, I set up an international communications agency at the age of 24, which is 10 years ago now. And this gave me an opportunity to go to these distant lands, to these different cultures, and work with some of who I perceive to be some of the wisest men and women on the planet. People like Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu. And so I wanted to see what are the patterns and characteristics between wise people and how can we access it? Is it true that wisdom equals knowledge? Wisdom equals avoiding pain. Wisdom is, as Augustine said, reading every page of the book of life from traveling far and wide. So I've been very privileged that in the last 10 years I've been able to go throughout Europe and much of the rest of the world. But our journey starts here, in the mountains of Montserrat, 30 kilometers northwest of Barcelona. Beautiful place. And I was there to train some young people in journalism. And there was a gathering of 300 of the preeminent religious and spiritual leaders around the world, the knowledge keepers. And it was at this meeting where I came across this guy, Dharma Master Jin Tao, a complete and utter dude. This guy was a former child soldier in Burma, went through this amazing spiritual process, lived under a vow of silence in a cave for many years, and came out this enlightened being. You can tell his wisdom from his smile, can't you? And he said to me in a conversation, Simon, how many fingers am I holding up? I thought, oh, I know this one. I bet you know this one as well. So I thought, you cheeky Buddhist dude, you. But I thought, okay, 4 fingers and a thumb, thinking I was really clever. No. 9. 9. Don't forget the gaps in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, what the Dharma Master was saying is that wisdom is not just about what we know, but about what we don't know, the wisdom of not knowing. As a society, we really don't like the gaps in between, because conventional wisdom is about the accumulation of knowledge, good grades to go into a good college, a good degree to get a good job to get a good salary, and so on and so forth. Gaps in our knowledge are seen as a sign of weakness, as a sign of ignorance. When was the last time that you heard a politician say, I don't know? The beauty of music lies not just from the notes, but from the space between them. The power of conferences like TED comes not just from the talks, but the gaps between the talks, from the lunches, from the breakout sessions, to the person sitting right next to you. And wise people know that with every single thing that we know, there's a whole world that we don't know. This is where the mystery, the magic happens. So wise people know that some of the wisest words that any human being can say is, I don't know. So that's wisdom and knowledge, not just about what we know, but what we don't know, and embracing the gaps between. What about wisdom is avoiding pain? Well, it's a really interesting city, I thought, to study this is New York City. A city like so many others has suffered deep pain and suffering in recent years, particularly with 9/11. Is it possible that wisdom could come from a city like this? Not despite the pain and suffering, like Aristotle might say, but because of it? Well, in March 2010, I was invited to New York to facilitate a global youth peace summit, a gathering of young owls. And it was at one of these breakout sessions, one of the gaps between the fingers, where I came across this woman, Dr. Jenny Stepanek, an amazing woman. She told me her story, how she passed on a rare neuromuscular disease to each of her 4 children, unwittingly. She had no idea. How she watched all of them die. She told me how she used to play and skip and dance with her children, and now suffers the adult variant of the same neuromuscular disease that killed her 4 children. And now she has to breathe through a straw. She told me about her eldest son, Matty, pictured here, being cuddled by his mummy, who died a couple of weeks before his 14th birthday. Matty was a prophet, a poet, a peacemaker. He had a message of a just peace, a message of playing after every storm. And Jenny's telling me all of this with so much emotion, so much vulnerability in her voice that she was inspiring compassion in me. And I realized that as a society, we don't really do emotionality, particularly not in Britain. As journalists or consultants or doctors or many other professions, we're asked to leave our pain at the door, to be objective, to be dispassionate. I realized from Jenny that when we're asked to be objective, dispassionate, to leave our pain at the door, that's a dehumanizing request. We're being asked to be less of what makes us us. Rather than avoiding pain, I learned from Jenny that wise people recognize that pain is an unavoidable part of what it means to be human. What wise people do is that they choose to channel it, to inspire compassion in others, to be vulnerable, to learn more, to live more, to love more, to be more human. And this is a pattern that is seen throughout all of the wise people that I've worked with in the last 10 years. So wise people have got the courage to be vulnerable, not to try and avoid pain, but to see pain as an essential and an unavoidable part of human existence. So then there's the idea of the worldly wise. Now, the last 10 years have been all over, but particularly to India. I've spent a lot of time in India. This is when I had the privilege to work with His Holiness the Dalai Lama at the Golden Temple in Amritsar. But this time last year, I was in New Delhi, and my wife was 5 months pregnant, and I'd been away for a little while, and I was just about to jet off again, so this time to Uganda to do some work for the US Department of State. And I really missed my wife. And it was then when I heard a story, an ancient story from Indian mythology, that challenged and changed everything that I thought I knew about wisdom and what it means to be wise in the 21st century. Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati have got a sacred fruit from the gods. Both of their sons, the elephant-headed deity Ganesha and Skanda, who's long and live, both desperately want this fruit. So the parents devise a game. They say, whoever travels around the globe 3 times and returns first wins the fruit. So Skanda, who's all handsome, jumps on his magic peacock and flies off around the world, making sure to stop at different sacred sites en route to pay his respects. The elephant-headed deity Ganesha, he looks at his own vehicle, which is a mouse, and he pauses for thought. After a while, and with great devotion, he mounts his mouse very carefully. And he circles his parents 3 times. His parents say, "My son, what are you doing?" His parents say, "You're supposed to be circling around the globe." "My parents," Ganesha responds, "you are the whole world to me." He wins the fruit. As a society, we're constantly jetting off around the world. When we're not going on aeroplanes, we're on Facebook or Twitter or texting when we're missing conversations in the world right in front of us. I realized at that moment that I wasn't the head of an international communications agency spreading peace around the world. I was Skanda on a magic peacock, missing the world in front of me. And I realized at that moment that the pattern with all of the wise people, you can't rush them. Wise people, they go slow. This is the mindfulness bit. They take in every person, every moment, one at a time. So I realized I needed to go slow. So I decided to put my company on a 1-year sabbatical, the whole company. And it just so happened to coincide with the birth of my daughter, Seren. So here I am, just a couple of months ago, back in the garden, fortunately not a packet of cigarettes anywhere in sight, with the whole world in my arms. And I realize as I'm walking every single day in the garden with her, that children, and particularly babies, are probably the wisest of them all. You try and rush a baby. They go slow. Every single tree, every single leaf, every single face, one at a time. There's no greater gift than being present. They're so vulnerable. I'm in pain. I have a need. Why don't adults do that? So where are we in this quest to understand what it means to be wise in the 21st century? The truth is, I just don't know. But my experience tells me that in the age of new media and technology, wisdom is not confined to the bearded old professor anymore. Wisdom is accessible to each and every one of us. Every single one of us can say, I don't know. We can embrace the wisdom of not knowing and the gaps between the fingers. Every single one of us feels pain. And we can choose to channel that pain, to be vulnerable and inspire compassion in others, to be more human. And every single one of us can slow down, if only for a moment, put our mobile phones down and choose to see the world in front of us. And I believe that when we do that, we see the world completely differently. And if we can see the world differently, and we can take meaning from it and share it with others, then we begin to leave a legacy of love, a legacy of ideas, a legacy of hope for those who follow us. You have the power to be wise right here, right now. Whether you choose to use it, it's up to you. Thank you.